Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are continuing to talk about continuity in government by looking at presidential succession. This is important because we need to know the process for replacing the President of the United States if a current president cannot continue to serve in office. When the framers were thinking about what to do if something happens to the president, they needed to figure out a line of succession. They thought Congress should pass a law to figure it out, but one framer mentioned that the vice president is there to take over the presidency if something happens to the president. Over time, Congress has passed a series of such laws. They passed the Presidential Succession Act of 1947, which lists the order of succession for 17 possible presidents after the vice president. They are Speaker of the House of Representatives, President pro tempore of the Senate, Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of the Defense, Attorney General, Secretary of the Interior, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Energy, Secretary of Education, Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Secretary of Homeland Security. That's the whole list there. In 1967, the 25th Amendment laid out who takes office under various instances. It allows the vice president, along with the majority of cabinet officers, to declare a president unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. This became urgent after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. Legislators realized that if Kennedy had lived, but in a severely impaired state, the presidency would not be able to function. It also allows the president to replace the vice president with approval from Congress, should that office become empty. It is important to note that before the framers signed off on the Constitution in 1787, they added one more provision, quote, to keep the executive and legislative branches separate, let us clarify. People can hold only one government position at a time, unquote. Okay, we now know the line of succession for presidents. Are there any big problems with this? Keep in mind that no constitution can cover every possible event. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall once said, quote, the Constitution is more of an outline rather than a detailed legal code, unquote. But sometimes outlines need to be filled in, and that does not always happen properly. Some claim the Presidential Succession Act is an accident waiting to happen. For example, the Speaker of the House is second in line after the Vice President, but this person might belong to a different political party than both the President and Vice President. And if the Speaker takes over the presidency, that means the House is left leaderless at a pretty crucial time. The 25th Amendment fills in some of the outline, but there are still vague areas like the phrase unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. For example, if you do not like the president, can you claim they are unfit to serve? Or what if the president is suffering from a psychological problem like depression or paranoia? There are 4 presidents who died while in office: William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Warren G. Harding, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There were 4 presidents who were assassinated: Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, James A. Garfield, and William McKinley. Presidents also get sick. Woodrow Wilson insisted on remaining in office until the end of his term in 1921, even after suffering a serious stroke in 1919 that left him physically and mentally debilitated. Dwight D. Eisenhower suffered both a heart attack and stroke while president. He bucked his doctor's advice not to run for re-election in 1956. He won, and fortunately, his health did not deteriorate. The country would face a constitutional crisis if the vice president and cabinet secretaries decide a president is unfit, but that president resists removal from office. Under those circumstances, Congress would have 21 days to choose. The president stays in office unless a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress agrees with the vice president and cabinet. Let's think about a hypothetical scenario that was prepared by the Brookings Institute and Brookings Institution and the American Enterprise Institute to demonstrate the chaos that will result from a disaster hitting right before the swearing-in ceremonies on Inauguration Day. According to the scenario, terrorists detonate a small nuclear device on Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the Capitol. Everyone at those locations and in between is killed or immobilized. Without an incoming president, vice president, speaker of the House, or president pro tempore, the presidency should pass to a member of the cabinet. But which one? The president-elect has not taken office or confirmed a cabinet. An outgoing cabinet officer who has not resigned and was not at the White House could get the job. Possibly the Secretary of Veterans Affairs could step unsteadily into the presidency. Or if no one in the constitutional line of succession is alive, several generals, undersecretaries, and governors might claim they are in charge. Undoubtedly, bitter arguments and political feuds would result, and Americans might not accept the person who gains power as a legitimate official. I bring up this example to emphasize the broadness of the rules of succession when it does not account for these types of scenarios. We do not want to be in a situation where there is no one leading the country and it does not have a president for the time being. With all of this in mind, let's see how other systems of government handle succession. Many states have detailed rules for succession in public office, even for positions below the executive branch. 7 of them stop with the initial successor to the governor. California explicitly states that the lieutenant governor can take over in the case of a temporary disability. The Montana Constitution provides that the lieutenant governor becomes the acting governor if an illness or disability renders the governor incapable of performing the office, as well as whenever the governor has been absent from office for 45 days. 20 states, including California and New York, require the governor to transfer power to the next official in line when leaving the state, even briefly. In contrast, the President of the United States is always fully empowered regardless of how far they are from home. Many countries have a line of succession, but the circumstances are no more spelled out than they are in the US, and the line is generally shorter. After you hear these examples, you will see that no system is perfect. In South Africa, the line of succession is only 4 levels deep and is triggered when the executive is absent from the republic or otherwise unable to fulfill the duties. Kind of vague, isn't it? In France, if the presidency becomes vacant or if the cabinet declares that person incapacitated, the Constitution calls for the election of a new president within 20 to 35 days. Meanwhile, the president of the Senate and then the cabinet would be in charge. In India, the vice president takes over for an absent or ill president, though the Constitution does not spell out the circumstances. If that person is unavailable, a series of judges takes over until a new president is elected. In Brazil, the federal constitution establishes that a vice president succeeds as a president or as president when the elected president dies, resigns, or is removed from office. But when President Dilma Rousseff was impeached in 2016 and Vice President Michael Temer took over, his political views were very different from hers. After being accused of financial scandals in 2017, Temer was replaced in 2019. In conclusion, the issue of handling presidential succession is far more complex than it might first appear. The framers only included having the vice president take over the presidency if needed and decided to let Congress make succession laws. The framers did not explicitly outline what type of scenarios would warrant a succession process and who else besides the vice president can replace the president. Over time, such laws such as the Presidential Succession Act of 1947 and the 25th Amendment have added clarity and structure. But again, those did not provide explicit information on which circumstance requires a president to not serve anymore. They just give broad outlines that are up for interpretation. History shows that illness, assassination, and unforeseen crises can quickly challenge the continuity of government. Even today, questions linger about what it means for a president to be unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office and how political dynamics might influence the process. It is critical that every succession plan accounts for enough circumstances to the point where we do not have more questions than answers on replacing a president, as well as every other political leader. After all, understanding the line of succession is more than about knowing who comes next, but also about ensuring that our government continues to smoothly operate and handle any disruptions in leadership positions. When our government keeps operating, we do not remain static. In the next video, we will continue with talking about continuity in government by focusing on Inauguration Day for the president. Until then, Please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.